Hi everybody. It's been a long time. Uh, I've just got back from some extensive tours on marketing the wine back east. I actually just got back from a trip, 11-day trip, 3 days in New Hampshire, rest of the time in Boston area, Massachusetts. I have to say the market is while never going to be what it used to be, is definitely coming back. There's a lot of appreciation for the work that we're doing with our wines. I think it's really time to kind of put what we're doing into somewhat of perspective. Over this last couple weeks, I really got a clearer idea of what we're trying to accomplish in making these natural wines. I think I need to just kind of briefly, very quickly outline what we do. Um, Starting in any particular time of the year, but let's just start with December, beginning of the pruning season. All the grapes that we get, all the vines that we get grapes from are hand pruned, meaning that there's no, hydraulics. There's no hedging. This is done, cane and spur by spur. This time of year, we're starting to open up the ground and cut down the cover crops that we put in last fall. The time to start suckering the vines. Then in a few weeks, we'll start. Hopefully, we'll be seeing flowering. We're putting a little bit of sulfur on the vines now to protect them or to work with the mildew. And then we'll have the set, which we'll see how much fruit we're going to have. And then in the summer, we'll be doing our green harvesting, cutting off the excessive fruit. And then obviously in September, the harvest will start. Sort of elementary, but given that idea and the fact that all the vineyards that we're taking grapes from are certified organic and some of them are certified biodynamic, that we have some very, very good fruit that we're going to be bringing in, 2 tons an acre and less, given the outline that I just gave you and how they're taken care of. So when these grapes are eventually picked at what we consider the right sugar acid balance, they're crushed. We have in our winery, there's no fermenter bigger than a container, a redwood tank in this case, that'll hold 1 ton of fruit. They're allowed to start fermenting on their natural yeast, which is a real important adjunct to the kind of wines that we're making. Natural wines need natural yeast. There's so much work that we're doing in the vineyards to protect and encourage the natural yeast. Nothing's being put on there in any way that's going to harm the population of indigenous yeast that we use for the fermentation. I can't speak enough about the need for an indigenous yeast to define regional wines. It's one of the defining elements. I think the weather the climate of that year is the first one. I guess the weather would be the proper term. And then the indigenous yeast working with what grapes that were given for that particular vintage. So the wine is allowed to start. The wine is fermenting on its natural yeast. The caps, as the CO2 starts to push the solid material up, they're pushed back into the fermenter. It's really important that the human hand is used to push that cap down. It's soft. It's not hard like a piece of steel would be. We're not spraying, pumping over, which tends to oxidize the wine. We're pushing the caps down by hand. So if the cap is this thick, sometimes it's up to this far on your shoulder. As we push that material back into the fermenting juice, there's beautiful foam that comes up. But another thing, just like the natural yeast, the reason for pushing the caps down is that you're feeling the fermentation. You know the hot spots. You know the spots that are being cooler. Fermentation actually happens in little colonies of around the fermenter, and actually parts could be hotter than others. So one of the things of using the hand, the arm, is to homogenize all that fermenting fruit. And then the other really important part about it is getting the nose into, because by pushing those caps down by hand, you're getting your face into it, you're smelling it. And that's the winemaking right there, is the working of the caps is probably, the most important part we could do. The natural yeast being the most important part that nature gives us. This is the most important part that we could do as workers in the vineyard, in the winery. It ferments 7 to 10 days. It's pressed out in a In an old-fashioned basket press, the only difference is we have a hydraulic ram that pushes out the juice. Very traditional way of doing it. It goes from the fermenter, it's baled out into the basket press. We have a hydraulic ram that presses out the juice. We get at best 150 gallons per ton. Goes into, as it's pressed out, it goes into a plastic bucket, and then from there, it's pumped directly into the barrels. Through the time that the barrels are with us, especially the vintage is with us, especially the first racking, we homogenize 240 gallons at a time. So we do a somewhat of a homogenization of the lots. It's racked when the wine needs to be racked. It's bottled when the wine needs to be bottled. Some wines are bottled very young, like the Rosé. Then wines like Carignan a year to a year and a half later. And then we have some wines that are actually 3 or 4 years. It's bottled by hand with a siphon. It's corked by hand, and then it's labeled and the capsule put on it, and it's sold to the consumer. There's absolutely nothing added to this wine. And that's the thing that's been really, I've been thinking about a lot with organic and pure. We're not, this work that we're doing in viticulture is the basis. This is why wine became famous, is by making it like this, as natural as possible. There's no manipulation. There's no intervention. There's no additive, any kind of additives, any kind of additive. This is pure food. This is beyond thinking about organic and how important organic foods are. This is beyond organic agriculture and how important it is to our environment. This is a basis of a product that has been around for thousands of years. That's really a strong part of our society, Western culture, and I think that's lots of ways why other wineries can promote themselves as being natural and organic and biodynamic and all this, and at the same time using every stainless steel tank, every piece of equipment, reverse osmosis, spinners, anything to get a wine in their judgment follows a textbook recipe, whereas in fact we're dealing with a food. This is something that we're putting into our bodies. We don't want manipulated food. We want food that expresses where it comes from, and wine is one of those foods that really does that. The more I get around and I see what wines are being promoted and what people are thinking and how this is and how that is, it's beyond trying to market wine because the grapes were grown organically. It's beyond to try to market wine with no sulfites added, natural yeast. It's beyond that. It's making a pure, natural product that's been the basis for our culture for thousands of years. I mean, we've taken an idea and continued with the idea, but using techniques that are so far from what the food's supposed to be. This applies to a lot of food, but when you're growing tomatoes or you're raising steers, it's a little different than when you're bringing a product to market that has such a background to it and such a mystique. But the bottom line is, what are we doing? And my son Nick kind of figured out in the whole world, and it's probably more than this, but there's 24 wineries that are doing what we're doing, that are putting wines out completely like we are. There's no big tanks, there's no big processes. This is like putting your head down and making as good a wine as you can from the grapes that were grown properly.